Hello, everyone, and welcome to AJ Plus and Newsbroke's post-election live stream. Is it post? I'm not quite sure we are post-election yet. We have such a good show for you. We knew this was going to be an election week. This was going to be an election season. This has been an election season. People have been voting for a while now. And here we are. We've got a lot of results, and boy, they're not the results we thought they would be necessarily, but we have such a good show. We've got Jamaal Bowman, who just won his seat in Congress, or for the first time. He's part of the squad, part of Justice Democrats, folks. We got him joining us, as well as John Iadarola of the Young Turks, and the Damage Report, and Erica Andiola of RAICES, and some folks who have been on the ground, who have been following this election for you, who have been actually knocking doors despite this incredibly insane moment of a pandemic that we are in. I want to just start off by giving a few thoughts of my own. You guys chime in the comments, and please, again, if you're watching on YouTube right now, or if you're watching on Facebook, or you're watching on Periscope, share this stream. You're going to want to share this stream and the scream. You're going to scream when you share the stream. I haven't slept much. Neither has anyone else. Share this stream, like this video right now. That lets people know we are live. And stick around, because we are going to have such a good discussion. We're going to get in and out and all through this election. We're going to solve America by the end of this stream. And I know that's what you guys want from us. But if you don't know, I am Francesca Fiorentini. I am the host of Newsbroke, the news comedy show on AJ Plus that actually started back in 2015. Or maybe it was 2016, but basically when Trump started running for president. And here we are again, 4 years later, another election down, or almost down, not quite down. Will it be down? And there's some takeaways, right? We know this is an election week. It's an election season. Ballots are still being counted. And we know that we have to wait for them to be counted, right? Because that's what democracy is about. And this is very much an election about whether we want this country to be a democracy or not. And it turns out a lot of people don't. They're actually fine with the current president, who has very little regard for democracy, and has essentially announced that he has won. And as Bernie Sanders said, basically this election is, for Trump, tails, I win, heads, you lose. But despite that, this was the highest voter turnout since this country's had since 1908, the highest voter turnout. Now, that's still 65% of eligible voters. But look, little by little, if you're watching from abroad, we are a new little baby democracy. Yes, we've tried to tell you that we're the best one, but, we all know we're not. News for today. I think you maybe have been following. You've been on the pollsters. You've been cursing out Nate Silver, whatever you've been doing. But news for today is Arizona and Maine have been called for Joe Biden, and Biden is leading in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nevada, but they have not yet been called. They might be called during this stream. We know with those, if he wins with those states, it doesn't matter that Texas wasn't one, and it doesn't matter that Florida did also go to Donald Trump. Biden is very much still in this game, as is Trump, in fact. And again, these mail-in ballots are being counted. Pennsylvania mail-in ballots may not be counted for another 3 or 4 days. And in fact, if those states that I just mentioned go to Biden, they won't necessarily, the Democrats might not necessarily need Pennsylvania anyway. But we're going to talk about all that. I just want to name what we're all thinking, which is how, right? After all the lies, the corruption, the bungling of a global pandemic response that has led to the death of 230,000 Americans. How are people still voting for Donald Trump? And how are more people voting for Donald Trump, in fact, in the year 2020 than they did in the year 2016? A consequence of all the new voters is that some of those new voters vote for Donald Trump. Vote for a guy who doesn't even believe in counting all the votes. Votes for a guy who says maybe we shouldn't have a transition. Maybe you get rid of the vote altogether and you'll have a transition. And yet that is what we have. And I think something that Newsbroke has spoken a lot about, even 4 years ago when Donald Trump started his campaign, we talked about how this country is a young democracy and we are not exceptional in any way when it comes to how susceptible we are to real fascism, how susceptible we are to a strong man, supposedly strong, although honestly, really, how susceptible we are and how susceptible our toxic political system is to being demagogued, to being strongmanned, for the allure of fascism, as with all of its racist baggage, with everything that it implies, can happen in this country. And very much this is a trial, it's a trial balloon. It's a little canary in the coal mine. And maybe that canary lives, y'all. Maybe it lives. Just before we get into it, I want to also say that the House, in where Democrats believed that there would be a very strong victory, there would be maybe a repeat of 2018 in a blue wave, did not happen. Democrats actually lost seats and Republicans gained seats in the House. Democrats still maintain control of the House. And in fact, a little silver lining, and we will talk about this with Jamaal Bowman, is that with Cori Bush and Jamaal Bowman's election and Mondaire Jones and others who are part of the so-called squad, right, the progressive upstart wing of the Democratic Party, in fact, progressives represent a broader share of that smaller share of the Democratic House. Senate also not actually looking like is going to be retaken by the Democrats. There are races still out. There are races that are too close to call. In Georgia, there's going to be a runoff in January. We already know that. But it is not looking like the Democrats will retake the House. I say we because I am an opinion personality. I have opinions, and I'm squarely on the side of life, as in I want to live, as in I don't want coronavirus to ravage this country, i.e. we need to get Donald Trump and the Senate out. So if you are like mistaken and think that maybe I don't have come with my own biases, watch a little bit of Newsbroke and you'll definitely get it. But I want to just thank you so much for being here, and please continue to comment and to jump in these chats. And without further ado, I want to bring in our guests. He is a senior reporter covering the 2020. He's senior election for Politico, specializing in video. He's a huge Beyonce fan, which we will need to get through this. And he's been doing some great coverage over at Politico. Please welcome Eugene Daniels.
Hey, thank you for that intro, senior. I'm going to tell my bosses to give me some more money for that one.
Yeah, right? Francesca said I'm senior. Thank you so much for being here, Eugene. And also joining him is Natalie Molina Nino, a senior advisor for Movement Voter Project, which is a group that supports community-based organizations in key states focusing on youth and communities of color. She's right now in Atlanta, Georgia, and Movement Voter Project has been on the ground and monitoring voting in disenfranchised areas. Welcome, Natalie.
Thank you. I am happy to be here, and especially happy to be in Atlanta.
Yes, absolutely. There is a lot, man. Georgia is a huge story of the day. I want to just start off sort of more broadly and specifically about what I think everyone is wondering, Eugene. Is there a path to victory for Donald Trump? And is there a path to victory for Joe Biden? How is it looking? Please don't lie to me.
Yeah, I promise I won't. There's a path for both of these men. The path for President Trump is still kind of what we had at the beginning of the last night. It's still a slim, narrow path, right? And what's happening right now in states like Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania, the president and his team are looking, one, he is saying things like he wants to stop the vote count, which is not how this works, that it shouldn't all be counted. Again, not how democracy works, things that are very concerning. Joe Biden's path, especially him looking like he's going to hold on to Arizona, that is really good for him, right? That gives him some wiggle room when it comes to those states, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. It looks like CNN has just called Wisconsin for Joe Biden. The AP has not. But that is something that we're probably expecting. I've been talking to Michigan Democrats today, and they're feeling super confident there as well, right? What we're seeing, I think, larger is that this was not the repudiation of Donald Trump that Joe Biden was expecting, that Democrats were expecting, and frankly, some moderate Republicans were expecting, right? We saw a lot of that throughout the campaign. This was not a repudiation of the president's racist rhetoric, his hardline immigration plans. Those things are not an interlude in the Republican Party, and they're deeper in the Republican Party and this country, I think, than Democrats had hoped.
Great. Thank you. Of course, it's CNN who calls a state first. They love to do that. CNN is like the dude in the comments who's like first. That's what they do. But so with this Wisconsin win, just briefly, does that mean it's a wrap? Can we semi-celebrate?
Semi, you know what I mean? I think everyone should just chill out a little bit, because we're going to see some lawsuits, definitely from President Trump. They've already filed one. And that's going to happen. They're sending Rudy Giuliani to Pennsylvania. Yeah. He said he's on his way. So all of these things are going to continue to happen for this week and probably moving forward. So it's kind of buckle in time, but it looks like Joe Biden's going to do better than we were expecting at the end of last night.
Absolutely. It made for a very tough night's sleep. Natalie, how has it been for you in Georgia and getting out the vote? And what have you seen on the ground in terms of this lack of an overwhelming mandate and an overwhelming landslide for Joe Biden?
I mean, it is in terms of maybe the hope and the wishes that we all had that it would be a landslide. But when you think about the subset of the population that is Native American, the subset of the population that ultimately, especially women of color represents in this country, and you think of the fact that we are achieving, no matter if they're slim wins, the movement has been largely fueled by grassroots organizations who, for example, started pivoting to digital work and knocking on doors, but doing it virtually, right, over the phone, doing it all because of the pandemic long before any of the campaigns, including the Biden campaign, pivoted, right? So who were the first ones to pivot to digital? It was these grassroots organizations led by Black, Indigenous, people of color led organizations. And so, I don't know, I guess part of what I'm thinking is that, yeah, we all wanted this landslide, but on the other hand, if it wasn't for the grassroots organizations and the people of color on the ground, we wouldn't have slim wins at all, right? And it's kind of tremendous to think that this small group of people have moved mountains and created something that 4 years ago we would never have seen possible. And so, with Movement Voter Project, that's been the biggest takeaway for me, is that I was a surrogate for Warren, and when she dropped out of the race, I just wasn't feeling the idea of putting a lot of my time, energy, or even money into more campaigns. And so when I went looking, I looked for an organization that was basically just opting out of participating in campaigns and saying, who's moving the needle? Who's actually going to be more likely, like they did in Arizona, to actually get these low propensity voters out, right? Arizona wouldn't be possible if a bunch of, misfit Latinos weren't out on the streets getting over 1 million new people registered. And so, it's not a landslide, but I still think it's pretty amazing what we're achieving.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one question is that I've had, which is, should there have been more in-person events, right? And given that we're in a pandemic and that we know that Trump events have spread coronavirus, like a preschool spreads a common cold, like it is, we know like that it's incredibly dangerous, but at the same time, it seems like the Biden campaign was incredibly late to doing a safe amount of door knocking, a safe amount of getting out the vote. In terms of like, we had record numbers of early voters, record numbers of youth voters, right? This is not going to be that election where your parents can call you up and be like, why didn't millennials vote more, right? Record number of Asian American and Latino voters. And just if you want to comment, because there's a lot of talk right now, Natalie, around the Latino vote and why Trump actually made a lot of headway, specifically in Florida. What is wrong with how we're talking about the Latino vote right now? And can you clarify?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing wrong with it is it's not anything that Latinos don't already know. Apparently, it's just that the rest of the world is waking up the fact that you can't take, a territory as large as a continent plus that is also, got every possible race and ethnicity included, as well as religions, right? 1 out of every, 4 or 5 Latinos identify as Black. The immigrant experience of, say, a Cuban coming to a place like Florida, right, at the time that many of them came to Florida, is very different than the immigrant experience of the people, that come because of a failed democracy, largely instigated by, powers like the United States going into countries like where my family is from, Ecuador, Colombia. Our experiences coming to the United States, working in my case, like my family did in the sweatshops of Los Angeles, are very different, than the people who got immediate, citizenship coming from Cuba, and were embraced by a nation that loves people that are white passing, right? And so these are immigrant experiences that are absolutely different. And the fact that the US ever, or that any political party, left or right, ever thought of, the Latinx community as one monolith, it's a mistake. And I don't know that it's anything new that we're learning. I think that what we're learning is that people need to, study grade school geography.
Yeah. Eugene, make sense of the fact that Trump has more voters now than he did in 2016. Please. I want to play what he said in a little bit, but just how do you wrap your head around that? And, you've been studying this election for a while, and pollsters got it wrong yet again.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, when it comes to the polling community, right, they are missing something, right? There's something about what's happening in this country that we're missing in the polls. What they do moving forward, how we trust them moving forward, that's President Trump already doesn't trust polling. Republicans are starting to trust it writ large a lot less. That's concerning for future elections.
Yeah.
When it comes to, President Trump getting more votes, this was a high impact election. I think we'll see this as things start becoming more clear, is that as it became obvious that Democrats were coming out in huge numbers in the early vote, that did actually make Republicans a little more excited to go vote. They were saying the whole time that they were going to vote in person, but I think President Trump kind of like lying and saying that this, in-person voting, mail-in voting was fraudulent and would create a fraudulent election, that made Republicans kind of want to go out and vote for him. Some of the,
I think we may have lost you a little bit, Eugene. Did you? Oh, okay. Eugene froze. There you are. You're back.
The thing that Democrats are having a huge problem with is, you talked about it earlier. We were expecting this to be a COVID election, right? Like whether or not you thought President Trump did a good job or has done a good job at handling or mishandling this pandemic. That doesn't seem like to be the case, right? That is, it seems like we are so divided and so polarized in this country that something as big as 230,000 humans dying here because of the mishandling of a pandemic from an administration is not enough to make people run away from him. So that's how the country deals with that in the future is going to be interesting, I guess. Is probably the best way to put it. Concerning, huge, and because everybody has a lot of work to do, and how Democrats, like Natalie was saying, choose the people that they want to vote for them, and how they message that to each person and each group, even within a group, is going to be really key for their winning in other elections moving forward.
Yeah.
I would just add that, I'm kind of not surprised that the people who don't believe in the pandemic at all had no problem coming out and physically putting themselves in danger. And the people who believe in science and the people who understand how pandemics work, and not to mention the Black and brown people who are more likely to die from the pandemic, they were a little more reticent to come out, and the numbers aren't quite what, some of us had hoped. Not suggesting that that's the only reason, but objectively, when I think of, those two perspectives on life and science, it's kind of not shocking to me.
Yes. Life and science. That's how we will secede from the nation. There'll be the life and science portion of the country, or one country, and the other countries, just as we talked before in Newsbroke, just greater Idaho is really what it'll be. Just a very large Idaho. And I'm not convinced we don't need that right now. I'm going to play for you both and want to get your reactions to the clip that I think we all avoid watching, which was last night, Donald Trump clearly declaring fraud and victory at the same time. Take a listen.
This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. This is a major fraud in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list. Okay? It's a very sad moment. To me, this is a very sad moment. And we will win this. And we, as far as I'm concerned, we already have one.
There you heard it there. We don't want the voting to continue. We want it to stop, even though it was postmarked on November 12th. Also, there are about 300,000 ballots, I believe, that have been caught up in the USPS. As we all knew, they would be because of who is at the head of the USPS, Louis DeJoy. But Eugene, your reaction, you alluded to this earlier. Giuliani's being deployed to Pennsylvania. Could this end up at the Supreme Court based on the amount of legal challenges?
It could. The problem, there are so many problems with what President Trump said last night. One of the biggest problems is that he's promising that he's going to take it to the Supreme Court. The president can't just walk over to the Supreme Court and tell them to take a case, right? Like, that's not how it works. That's not how our country works. There are going to be lawsuits. Could they get to the Supreme Court? Yes. However, I think something that, we saw the Supreme Court over the last couple of weeks when they were deciding, in different states whether or not ballots can come, and they were focusing on not getting into the mess. And something I know Democrats are bristling right now because President Trump has 3 people on the Supreme Court that he put there. But I do think that Chief Justice Roberts is concerned about the validity of the court. He knows that it's taken a hit over the last few years. So I don't see the Supreme Court just doing whatever President Trump says, even if it makes it to the Supreme Court. The president wants it both ways, right? He wants votes to continue to be counted in Arizona, where he's a little closer. Exactly. But none of the secretaries of state that have spoken today in these states that are still counting have said anything about voting irregularities. This is something completely made up by the president and people that work for him. And so how Republicans react, not how Democrats on the left react, how the Republicans react, elected Republicans moving forward in the next few days and next weeks possibly, and telling President Trump, like, yo, chill. Like, that is not how this works. This is a democracy. We count the votes, and that is not a partisan statement, Mr. President. That's going to be key to how this shakes out and how he reacts and how his voters react and supporters react to whatever the outcome is.
So we're relying on Republicans?
Yeah, I think so. I know that's probably scary for people watching, but a little bit, right? Like there is, if Republicans just allow President Trump to continue on, this bandwagon, keep banging this drum, and then support him in that, right? If he has, judges in these different states, and then, on the federal level that just do what he says, that is going to be hugely problematic. I think when you talk to Democrats behind the scenes right now, they are hoping that Republicans will, because you've been hearing it over and over, right? We are going to continue to count these ballots. The Secretary of State of Georgia, a Republican, has already said there's no fraud here, right? He said that today. So those are things that, I think maybe might help people sleep a little better at tonight, maybe tomorrow.
Yes. Natalie, I want to leave you with the last word for right now. Well, maybe not, because I have so many questions. But I am very curious, since you're in Georgia. You got 2 Senate races. These are key races, and one is too close to call. The other, between Kelly Loeffler and Reverend Warnock, that's going to a runoff in January. Tell me about those and from the ground and what you've seen.
I mean, obviously, we're all moving to Georgia this month, right? So that's the first thing. Look, I think at the end of the day, not just Trump, but all the way down the line, when they know that they can't win, and the closer it gets to being narrower and narrower, we're going to see a lot of desperation. And then in Georgia, I think that, this is, again, what I said earlier in terms of the work. I mean, people like Black Voters Matters are headquartered in Georgia, right? They didn't just do work nationally. They did work home, right? And places, partners like this for Movement Voter Project are the ones that have been kind of doing this work, and they're not going away. And what I love about a lot of our grassroots partners, people like the organizations here in Georgia, is that they didn't just raise capital and deploy people who actually know their neighbors and got the vote out, but they also raise money for litigation. And that's kind of maybe, if I'm going to add to Eugene's effort to help people sleep, these same organizations that have been busting their bottoms to get, people out and in the streets have also raised money for lawyers. They knew that cheaters cheat. They knew that bullies try to bully. All of what we're seeing here is predictable, and it was budgeted, and we have lawyers, and we will fight.
That's good to hear. Natalie Molina Nino, thank you so much, from Movement Voter Project. Please check out their work, and if you want to support or get involved, do that. Eugene Daniels of Politico, I'm naming him a senior reporter. That's what he is.
Yes.
Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Us. Thank you both.
Take good care. And we have Jamaal Bowman waiting in the wings. He just won his seat in New York, and he's going to Washington. And I'm very, very excited. Thank you all for being here. Please remember to share this stream, like this stream. Let people know that we're live. I feel incredibly calm now. I feel a lot more educated and calm, and I hope you do too. And this is going to continue. Do I see Jamaal yet? No, not quite yet. Oh, hey. Oh, hi. You just snuck up on me.
Hello, how you doing?
Congratulations, Representative Bowman. How are you?
Thank you very much. I am relieved. Relieved that the results are final in our race. Very excited. Very tired. Look to sleep for about 2 days, hopefully after today. But ready to get to work. And the more the results come in Biden's favor, that's also a beautiful thing. So feeling good.
I'm glad you're feeling good. We're looking to you to, your lift in Congress got a little bit heavier last night as Democrats actually lost House seats. Can you explain why? Why did they lose House seats? Is it because they weren't all running on Medicare for All and a Green New Deal?
Probably, yes, probably. Yeah, it's very disappointing to lose House seats. It's disappointing not to have flipped the Senate. We were very, ambitious in our goals this cycle, and we weren't able to accomplish some of those. But a Biden White House will make things feel a lot better. But yeah, in terms of the Democratic Party, we have to do a better job of working together. We have to do a better job of growing the base and expanding the electorate and bringing people in who have been historically ignored. There's so many people out there who no longer believe in our system, and rightly so, because the system has failed them for so long. And the Democratic Party just has to do a better job of connecting with those people and bringing them in. There's absolutely no reason for us to lose so many seats. But I hope when I get there, I hope to work with senior leadership. I hope to work with organizations and people within the Democratic Party that I don't always agree with, because the bottom line is it's either give democracy a chance to live another day or allow fascism and something worse to persist. And I'm all for democracy, and I'm for what the progressive movement is all about and what we've been pushing across the country.
Yes, you have a difficult dance ahead of you that I think, and a sort of a needle that many others have tried to thread here, trying to work with moderate Democrats and leadership, but also push them. And we need you to push them for sure. I just wanted to ask, what's the initiation process into the squad? Is it just like red lipstick and reciting the Green New Deal, or you got to wear hoops, or?
That's a great question. I think you got to get jumped in. I think that's the first, you got to get jumped in. So I think first day of orientation, Ayanna, Ilhan, Rashida, and Alex, they're going to beat me up. They're going to beat Corey up and see if we can take it. No, we believe in the Green New Deal. We fought for Medicare for All. We believe in housing as a human right. We're all endorsed by the Justice Democrats. I think that's the common thread. Right. And, the squad was a name given to them by journalists, by outsiders. It's not, how they refer to themselves. So if my platform and who I am as a person and representative leads to others saying that I'm a part of the squad, so be it. All I know is this: I'm happy that these 4 amazing women did this in 2018 first to kind of create a pathway for someone like me to do it in 2020. And I'm already in communication with them, already looking to collaborate, and it's just really exciting.
Like I said, you're of a heavier lift, and there is more hope being put on your shoulders, and I hope you feel that hope. I want to ask you, what were the lessons that you learned, and what are the takeaways for the Democratic Party with your victory, right? You're defeating this incumbent. How many years was he in office? Was Elliot Engel in office?
31 years.
31 years. I'm in Los Angeles, California. You know, we've got Nancy Pelosi. We've got Feinstein wants to run again. I mean, this has been my entire life that these people have been in office. What was that process like? Did you have to go negative on Representative Engel, or what, what was that? And what's your advice for going forward?
Well, we rarely went negative. We critiqued his record in certain areas. It wasn't a nasty sort of attack. It was pointing out, he takes a ton of corporate PAC money. He's funded by the military industrial complex and big real estate and big pharma. And that's not what we need for our district and for this country. But I think more importantly, I think the Democratic Party needs to look to working class people as potential candidates for office. I mean, I'm a middle school principal. I worked in public education for 20 years. I mean, do you know how much I learned in that experience as a teacher and school counselor and middle school principal serving children from historically neglected communities? I mean, I learned so much, and all of that became part of my platform in addition to what I was hearing from people throughout the district. And that's the key, right? We have to engage a diverse constituency. The Democratic Party tends to, only shoot down the middle. Let's talk to moderates. Let's talk to people of a certain class. Let's continue to engage a certain type of donor. And that's just the wrong outlook. In my opinion, Bernie Sanders started the blueprint in 2016, really calling out the economic injustice in our country. And it continued in 2018 with AOC and the squad, and in 2020 with Bernie's second run, when he was able to outraise the entire field, all from small dollar donations, not taking any corporate PAC money. And the field had to gang up against him to ultimately beat him. Yeah. So we have to be very clear on what our mission is. And in my opinion, our mission is to cure America's original sin, which is racism. And it's something that continues to persist today, and it manifests itself in our economic inequality as well. So we've pivoted from chattel physical enslavement to economic enslavement, where you have people just struggling, working super hard just to barely survive. And that's unacceptable. And as Democrats, we are supposed to be the party of the working class, and we got a lot more work to do in that area.
Yeah, I actually just want to jump onto that last point. You on your website and your agenda, and you've spoken about the need for another American Reconstruction. It's something on Newsbroke we've talked about. I know it's something that Reverend William Barber talks about, a third American Reconstruction. What does that mean to you moving forward, and seeing also just not I don't know if you want to call it divided, but how many people are willing to still throw in their lot with someone like Donald Trump?
Donald Trump has revealed how much hate and discrimination is still out there in the world. It was always there. It was simmering under the surface throughout Obama's years and for quite some time. And many of us thought after Obama got elected, we were now a post-racist society. And Trump revealed that that's no longer the case. Not only are there rabid alt-right explicit racists and fascists, but there's also a ton of implicit bias out there that continues to dictate how America's institutions function. Yeah. So for me, the third Reconstruction is about a collective healing and a collective reckoning where we take responsibility for our history as a nation, and we call out and identify how institutional racism continues to persist. If you look at redlining that occurred after World War II, and how the American government invested $120 billion in building the suburban middle class. And oh, by the way, 98% of that money went to white families, and Black families were completely not allowed to engage in that process at all. That's a direct example of how institutional racism persists from the federal government to our real estate industry, and how we have to bring resources to bear to reverse the impact, the financial, but also the social impact of a decision like that. Yeah. You know, we tried Reconstruction, you know, after the Civil War. That didn't work, and the Homestead Act disproportionately impacted or supported white people, both foreign-born and domestically born. We tried it after the Civil Rights Movement, and it didn't work then because of mass incarceration. So now, hopefully, third time will be a charm, where we're targeting mass incarceration and we're targeting truth and reconciliation in a way that's similar to Germany, Rwanda, and South Africa.
I mean, and this is my question. It's like, is white America ready to reckon, you know? And how do you, there's a lot of hand holding. There is a lot of political hand holding. There's emotional hand holding, you know, and I think obviously, you know, with some of the policies that you support, like Medicare for All and a Green New Deal, there is a way that, you know, we can all work together toward a kind of vision, but part of that vision is absolutely reckoning with, like you were saying, these original sins, the racism of this country. And who better than a principal to help us get there? I wanted to ask you about if it looks like, right, that the Democrats don't flip the Senate and you still have Mitch McConnell, you still have Lindsey Graham, but potentially Biden is president.
Don't remind me, please. Don't remind me. Oh my goodness. What a time. Listen, I guess I wouldn't have it any other way, right? If we're going to take down institutional racism, let's target the two people who have kept it alive over the last 50 years, Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell. So, you know, hopefully we'll have a Biden presidency, which will make that job easier. But it's good to have a target, right? Like when you're, you know, so we're not talking.
You want to draw it out. You just want to make it good.
Yeah, we're not talking about racism in the abstract. We're going to talk about institutional racism, which we see in criminal justice, in our mass incarceration, and in police brutality, and in economic inequality. But then we can point to Graham and point to McConnell directly and just say, look at what they've represented. Look at what they fought for. Look at what they haven't done. And hopefully use that to galvanize people both on the outside and the inside. And now that Trump is going to be gone, God willing, hopefully Republicans will come back to earth and begin to govern in a way that is not in support of fascism. You know, that's wishful thinking, but hopefully a few of them will begin to move back into a place where things make a little bit of sense.
Absolutely. Sadly, this country still needs Republicans. I'm always waiting for the moment where we don't, but we still do.
Hopefully in the next 5 to 10 years, you know, if they don't get their act together, you know, we'll be done with them.
You know, I am curious about, I'm curious about your district, you know, and what is the mandate from your district, from your constituents, when it comes to their needs and how that plays out in Washington?
Yeah. Well, this goes to your point, right? So, you know, are white people ready for a reckoning? My answer is yes, if I'm looking from the perspective of my district. You know, we tripled voter turnout in our primary race. We tripled turnout amongst young people and people of color. We had children and grandchildren telling their parents and grandparents they better vote for Jamaal Bowman. I'm the first African-American to hold this seat in the nation's history. And along with Mondaire Jones, we're going to be the first 2 African Americans that Westchester sends to Congress in the history of Westchester County, New York. So that communicates a shift. And the shift is definitely generational. And the shift is in response to how deplorable of a leader Donald Trump has been, and how, in many ways, our federal government, regardless of Democrat or Republican, has allowed this inequality and racism to persist without dealing with it directly.
Yeah.
And what I always tell people, listen, there are white, wealthy people who care about racial and economic justice. And some of them, many of them, thousands of them actually are in this district. So I'm looking forward to working with them and getting to work. And if we could do it here, which is, if we were a nation, we would have the 8th worst economic inequality in the world. So if we could do it here, it could be done anywhere.
Yeah. I wanted to I know you got to go in a little bit, but I wanted to ask a question that you sort of brought up earlier about Bernie Sanders and the way that moderate Democrats very much, got together and were like, we're not going to let Bernie happen. We're going to throw all of our weight behind Joe Biden in the span of, 72 hours or less. How do you think this election might have played out had Bernie Sanders been the nominee? I think it's a question a lot of us are asking without having a shoulda, woulda, coulda, but just curious about your thoughts.
It's a great question. I don't know. I want to say Bernie would have won, especially, as things are playing out with Biden. It looks like, hopefully, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but he's doing well. I think Bernie would have won, because the thing that Bernie and Trump had that was similar is they both talked about how the system is rigged and failing the majority of American people. Trump was disingenuous as he spoke about it, but Bernie wasn't. And I think that understanding and that message really resonates with people from diverse backgrounds and diverse parts of the country. But please don't torture me with thinking about a Bernie presidency. It would be a revolution of the best kind in our country. And Malcolm X, people called him a radical, but he once said, America has the opportunity to be the first nation in the history of the world to have a non-violent revolution if it just does what it's supposed to do. And that's my goal. That's my mission. Let's create a non-violent revolution by doing simply what we're supposed to do, by giving people basic opportunity, making sure their needs are met so they can live with dignity and self-determination. That's what we should be able to do as the wealthiest nation on earth.
Jamaal Bowman, Congressman-elect of District 16 in New York, thank you so much for being here. Congratulations on this victory, and I hope that you don't get too big for us, because I feel like that's going to happen, and we're going to start talking about what you're wearing and
Jesus,
how you keep all your clothing for Vogue shoots. I feel like this is going to...
Hopefully not. I will not get too big. I will definitely be back. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, and can you bring some of that principal energy to Congress? Because you're very experienced with bullies and brats and whiners.
That's right. I promise I will.
Okay.
All right.
Jamaal Bowman, everybody, take care. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. If you're just joining us, we're doing a post-election Democalypse roundup. I am Francesca Fiorentini, host of Newsbroke on AJ Plus. You should be subscribed to AJ Plus, absolutely. You should be watching all of Newsbroke's videos because they're great. And thank you all for being here, man. It's been a long 4 years, and we've got more to go. We have so much more to go. And if you watch Newsbroke, you know that we are fact-based and we are biased, and we are proudly biased and we are proudly fact-based. We also proudly make dumb jokes, okay? We call Tiffany Trump the Puerto Rico of the Trump family because everyone sort of forgets that she exists, and then she needs our help and we're not there for her. Things like this. It's important to have some amount of levity, all right? This is how we survive. I am a comic, and I am so tired of Trump jokes personally. But there may be one person who is even more tired of Trump jokes than I am, and that is a Trump impersonator who has, in the most brilliant way, portrayed Trump. He was the host of the President Show on Comedy Central, just the best show that they did in recent memory. Please welcome Anthony Atamanuik.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Anthony. How are you?
I'm well. I mean, I'm doing okay today. I'm. I think I drank a little bit of Kool-Aid last week, sort of being like, well, maybe the turnout, maybe there will be this wave of people who decouple from the sort of wave of young people coming out to support. Maybe I think a Bernie candidacy. Maybe they'll just break to support Biden.
Yeah.
And then we sort of didn't see that happen. And so I felt as I closed in on yesterday, I started to get back into, no, my show predicted it correctly. I should listen to my show and not and not mess around. I don't want to swear on your show. So
not on this show. But before we continue, I want to bring in a comedy writer and also been a host of Newsbroke, Matt Lieb. Get yourself in here, Matt.
Hey, good to see you. How you doing, Tony?
Like I said, I don't know. I'm doing okay. I mean, you know what I'll say is that I think that the idea of any of this being surprising it's not surprising to me.
Yeah.
None of this is surprising. And, I think that it reveals how broken we are and how beyond Trump this is. We want to talk about 4 years and it's 40 years,
Yeah.
It's 40 years of decay that we're witnessing, sort of, everything sliding off this skull at the same time. And so,
Did you say skull?
Yeah, like it's sort of like meat falling off a skull. Like,
yeah.
The body's been rotting, but maybe you go in the room and you're like, oh, there's someone sitting there. And then one day you walk in the room and just their face and nose slide off. You go, oh no, it's a dead body. It's a skull.
Yeah.
That's the United States.
Yeah, and it's definitely our institutions too. I've realized at this point we can't even trust polls. So I kind of understand anti-science people now. I'm like, you know what? Maybe science is a bunch of lies.
Yeah.
I mean, polling science is.
Well,
Anthony,
polling is off. Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I just wanted to let everyone know who you are, and if you haven't seen, if you.
Who cares? I'm in my office. My career's shit. I mean, that's not good. I told you I couldn't.
Is that a piano behind you? It looks, or is a coffin?
No. You know what? This is my turtles. My tortoise lives in my office.
You have a tortoise?
I have a tortoise, and then I have my book featured on the tortoise's coffin cage.
American Tantrum. Amazing. Okay, but for those who haven't seen some of your work, I just want to play probably one of my favorite parts of one of your episodes of The President Show, and maybe one of the earlier episodes too. Take a look, everyone.
There we go. Yeah, Hong Kong goes the truck. Honk, honk goes the truck. And you see how it moves, big trucks, big wheel, and the big wheels go around. And then when you pull on the horn goes crazy. And the truck's so unbelievable because it's a tremendous truck. I wish we had a bigger truck. Wouldn't it be great if a big truck came? Like a big truck, a big 18-wheeler truck, and it rolled down. And then the guy showed up, and he was a macho guy. And he says to me, you drive the truck. And then I get to drive the truck. And I get to go all the way down, and I drive it right into the river. And then I drown in the river, and I feel the water seeping over me. And then the air leaves my lungs. And in the moment where my body starts to react and wants air, I let go. And when I let go, the water fills my lungs, and I'm finally at peace.
That's my wish. Didn't come true yet.
Oh, that is incredible.
Anthony, that was improvised, was it not?
Yeah, we were actually about to be done filming, and I said, let's get B-roll of me sitting in case we need to use it to cut into other things. And I was just sitting there, half in character, but sort of resting. And then the truck, and I went, I just prayed that everybody would you can sort of see right when I say a truck, you can see that I look off to a producer and I'm like, please don't like reset this. And so then we got up and they filmed it. And then what's amazing is that he said that monologue at a rally this week. So
This
I
is
look
someone who brings in actual trucks to his events.
Yes. Well, and I mean, and to be fair, I think I had seen him talk about a truck the week before, but I didn't rip anything off. But I will say that I do really believe that if you look at our show as like almost an I Ching, you can pretty much go into our show and specials and you can find any event and place it in any point in the timeline past when we were summarily canceled. Thank you, Comedy Central.
Including even the response to the coronavirus. You guys even predicted that. You have this weird ability on the show to predict what Trump was going to do. And also you created like a perfect psychological profile of Trump before he was even in office. It was kind of amazing. I don't know how you did. Do you have a background in psychological profiles?
I've done a lot of therapy, and I've read a lot of Jung and things like that. But I think probably doing therapy and also I think sometimes in a character you have to have a willingness to understand where you connect with the character. And I had to be honest with myself from teaching improv, knowing this, that I would wax about things. I would talk about stuff without having any knowledge of it. I would BS my way through, theories I had. And so I knew that I had a part of me that could line up easily with his speaking style. And then I just had to take the worst parts of myself, my worst instincts, and sort of allow them to ungovern over that character. But I also think it was more of like, when I was young, I grew up in an economically disadvantaged city called Chelsea in Massachusetts. And it was very mixed, a lot of high Latinx community there. But then I went to a very white suburban Massachusetts school in northern Massachusetts. And I really caught, and fell into a crowd of kids going to hardcore shows and things like that, where I also was exposed to white supremacy. And even as a Jewish kid, I shaved my head and hung out with some spurious some scandalous.
Like, wait a minute,
people.
Who are you?
Yeah. And what's interesting, why I, early on looked at him and went, oh, he's reaching this segment is, you just knew from what he was saying. You can go to Morton Downey Jr., to Wally George. There's a long history of this sort of dog whistling American white supremacy. And I say American white supremacy because you also notice in the vote count yesterday a couple of things, which is it increased in the Latinx community in certain segments. It increased in the Black community, but it also increased among Zillennials and people in their 20s, white kids in their 20s. So when you see American white supremacy, you can see that people are attracted to a projection of this sort of arrogant power. And when you combine that with the manifest destiny and sort of lottery mentality, it's very hard to decouple the ugliest parts, which are easy and gross to see, right? People driving around in trucks with Trump flags, running people off the road, the clashes of Black Lives Matter events are very obvious and clear. They're very distinct, right? That's the minority. That's less than 1% of the execution of white supremacy in the United States.
Exactly.
Most of it's executed on Netflix and on network television and in advertisements and in our government and in our day-to-day interaction. And how do I leave a Duane Reade versus how a Black man leaves a Duane Reade? That's what white supremacy means. And American supremacy is actually these groups within the United States that want to attain this sense of power and sort of, I get, first class cabin treatment, and maybe I'm Latinx, but I want to identify with this adjacent community, this white community. And that's the most dangerous and toxic, and the failure of the Democratic Party to identify this. And the failure of Joe Biden to even if he wins, just to have taken a couple of the platform points that were so successful in Florida with the $15 minimum wage.
Yeah.
You had a lot of successful points. They ran so hard to the center, hoping to peel off what?
Yeah.
White people who drive around in trucks, who don't care, who at the end of the day, I count myself among them. in the sense of, does my life radically change? No, my life doesn't radically change. The idea of being quote unquote liberal or left would be that I care more about what happens to someone in Wisconsin and what happens to someone in Mississippi, because I do live in New York. I live in a citadel of protection from, and right. And so the point is that that's where you would argue that the moral virtue of the left is greater, because we actually care about the people that we contribute our taxes to, because God knows my New York taxes pay for Mississippi to exist. Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that especially
I thought you were supposed to be a comic.
Yeah, I'm not. When you wrote like someone's going to be fun, I was like, I'm not fun. There's nothing fun about me.
I mean, look, aren't you invested in the Trump industrial complex, Anthony? Don't you want him to win again?
Oh God, it's so, it's funny because I said that's like my least favorite, but you asked it in the way of like how gross a question that is.
Yes.
It's like, so I appreciate you asking it that way. No, I would love one. The last thing I made money off of, and it was about $2, was this book, because they shoved it in the back of the Barnes and Noble with the wooden toys.
Tell us about it. Tell us about it a little.
Oh, American Tantrum. I mean, you can buy it on Amazon, your local bookseller, or Amazon. In this book, which I wrote, my friend Neil Casey helped me because we improvised certain parts of it. Mm-hmm. You can find what happened in 2020, sans the pandemic, but everything from him announcing telling militias to go forward and we're going to turn Ferguson into Fallujah. All that's written in this book 2 years ago.
As Donald Trump.
Well, it's an interview with Donald Trump with a golf journalist. So it was actually, we wrote it. What's that one that came out that was like that you couldn't believe that the reporter got to sit in the Oval Office? It was like one of the first ones that broke.
It was like Fear or
not Fear, but it was I know what you're saying. It was remember the journalist was some kind of nothing guy.
Some random guy.
Oh yeah, it was
some random guy. We wrote this book.
Uh-huh.
Fire and Fury. We wrote this book
in
tandem with Fire and Fury. So our book came out first, actually. And anyway, so we have interviews in there. We had things about Cohen, and I alleged in this comedy book about Trump running money through Iran and North Korea. And then it's come out that some of his Deutsche Bank transactions did run money through there. So we just, here's the thing. It doesn't take much. By the way, it's not some magic Svengali trick. Just think of the worst possible thing someone can do.
Yeah.
And that's probably what he's thinking about doing.
Yeah. Think of something that's so on the nose hypocritical.
Yes.
That you'd be like, it would be impossible for him to do this because it would be so hypocritical. And that's the exact thing he's going to do. It's projection.
Matt Lieb and Anthony Atamanuik, what about a Biden administration comedically? What are we looking forward to there?
I don't know. I really don't know, because without a firm Biden victory, it feels like, I feel still uncomfortable with I love kind of not attacking the Democrats, but kind of like making fun of the status quo and showing and critiquing the Democrats for what they do. But it's always been, for me, the right wing has always been a much more fervent and immediate enemy. And without kind of a solid neoliberal victory, I'm just like, I really don't know. Can't answer the question. We'll find out next season of Newsbroke, right, Francesca?
Yeah.
Yep. Right. All of my managers watching now.
Yeah, right.
Well, all of your managers. I have one, and she doesn't call me, but
oh no, not that kind of manager.
Oh.
But no, my manager never called me either.
But I would say that I find it interesting that doing the Trump tours with James Adomian, which we did the 2 rounds. I found that there was a lot I guess my comedy's a little aggressive. I personally like to litigate the far left, the central left, and the right. I think that they're all, and not like all sidesy, sort of like they're all the same thing. And it's here's my puppet that's made out of the bones of someone who blew themselves up. No, I don't mean that sort of family friendly crap. But what I mean is that
family friendly. I love it. Okay. Yes.
The far left, for instance, has its own sort of like the Glenn Greenwald drama with The Intercept. That stuff that is such fodder for the navel gazing garbage that these people do, and not everybody, obviously. There's tons of activists on the ground, but I'm talking. It's always go after the personalities, go after people who run for-profit paywall podcasts, and then claim that they are doing it for the poor and indigent who are suffering without health care. And they're turning over $100,000 off of an interview with Noam Chomsky. It's the most insane disconnect I've ever seen in my life. And then to claim I'm a worker and why should I be embarrassed about getting money? When you own the podcast, you're an owner. You're not a worker. So to me, there's plenty of places on the left and the center and the right to always take on charlatans and people who take advantage. That's where you make fun of. You make fun of the people who sell, who are the Johnny Woos of the world. The grifters, the people who tell you $1 million house and you just all you have to do is do my 5-day program. There's plenty of that. There'll always be plenty of that to make fun of. Joe Biden, I don't know. James Domian does a good one. And Dana Carvey, I got to say, I did a thing with Dana Carvey. He's got an incredible Joe Biden. So they can do that. I don't want to ever do an political impression again. I'm a character, like avant-garde comedy person. I want to do like a Nexium parody. I have no interest in doing this. I hate this. I hate it.
Well, that being said, buy Anthony's book. You can find it by the wooden toys in the back of a not Barnes and Noble, since they don't exist.
Of a COVID testing center.
Anthony, I like you more than I thought I would, and I thought I would like really like. No. The only reason I'm saying that is because I was like, I love Anthony, but now I like really love you, and I don't want to come on too strong. You're saying all the right things, and I'm love having you on and want to talk more to you.
You won her over when you mentioned Glenn Greenwald being a grifter.
Oh God, such a grifter. Well, it's nice to be both of you. Have we met before, Francesca?
I don't think so. I did yell out Black Lives Matter at one of your events in San Francisco while you were Trump, and I was so triggered. I just yelled Black Lives Matter, and you said, "Get her out of here! Get her
out!" Good. Oh, I remember that San Francisco show. That was a mess. Yeah,
it was so good. All right, I never want to see you play Donald Trump again, but for the record, you are better than Alec Baldwin any day of the week, always, and we know this.
Well, thank you,
Anthony, Matt Lieb. Be well. Thank you for being here.
All right, thanks for having us.
Take good care. And thank you all for being here. I'm so sorry I haven't read your comments. I see them coming in. Thank you for sending them once again. Like this stream, share it. We got John Iadarola coming up in just a little bit. We're also talking about organizers who've been on the ground and also what they're planning in the coming weeks, right? If Trump doesn't concede, if he wins, if I don't know, hopefully aliens decide this is their moment. We're doing it. Go time. Because wouldn't that be just kind of a sweet release? Okay, comments from YouTube. Claudette J, it's over now. Biden won Arizona. The most 45 can get it now is 265 electoral votes. I see those numbers and I see your comment. I don't know if I believe it because I don't believe anything. But thank you for the comment. Tanish 23, you shouldn't be allowed to hold office for 30 years. Honestly, I think we're looking at a lot of senators in that case. The question about the Lincoln Project, what are they going to do after this election? Just keep making money and putting out ads for no one, I assume. YouTube Logan says, remember, Biden winning doesn't mean we get to chill out. It just means we have a new senior citizen to bully and treat as the enemy. True. It is more senior abuse, which is definitely what both Trump and Biden will cry. That is elder abuse, pretty much. Leo Tuzo on YouTube says healthcare is free stuff that is quote unquote free stuff that should be coming for higher taxes to the 0.1% and actually get paid itself by not having so many people sick with less disruptions to the productive apparatus. I think I understand that comment, but I also think I have no idea what you're talking about. But if you can comment again with clarifications, that'd be tight. All right, I am going to stop yammering on and get on with this program. Thank you all so much for being here once again. Share the stream, do what you got to do. We have folks who have been working on the ground. We're going to go into and talk about actual issues now. I'm so happy to have with us Erica Andiola, the Chief Advocacy Officer for RAICES, former press secretary for Latino Outreach for Bernie 2016, and who started community organizing when she co-founded Arizona Dream Act Coalition, and she's in Phoenix right now. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you for having me. What a crazy day.
Tell me about it. I mean, literally tell me about it. Before we continue, I'm going to bring on our next guest. Shante Wolf is the National Field Director for Sunrise Movement. She was the Deputy Campaign Manager for Charles Booker, also a former Kentucky Senate candidate we all remember not too long ago. Please welcome Shante.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here, both of you. Okay, so starting off, Erica, you're in Arizona. Did it go to Biden? What's happening?
As far as I know, look, it is historic. I am so happy. I was so happy last night. I am still happy. And we don't know what's going to happen in the entire election. What we do know is that Arizona has turned, it flipped. It flipped, in my view. And right now, what we have seen is that the reason why all this has happened is not because, all of a sudden in 1 year, everything just changed. This is a 10-year plus, movement and organizing on the ground that has been led by immigrants, by Latinos, Latinas, Latinx people. Mm-hmm. And what we're seeing now is the result of that. And it's just so great to see and so exciting.
Wow. So you went to bed happy last night.
I did, because I knew it. Like, I was like, I know when Joe Arpaio lost his election, when Trump won in 2016, that was a moment where I was like, you know what, we can actually win Arizona in 2020. And yesterday I was like, I knew it. I knew it was going to happen. I've been here organizing for so long. I know the groups on the ground, and I knew that we were doing the right work, and it's paying off.
Yeah. Shante, Sunrise Movement focused on Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. How did your work impact the youth vote? Which, once again, I've said it again. I've said it before. I'll say it again. No one can point fingers at millennials this year.
That's right. We were looking very closely at the results last night, because one thing is clear, our movement played a critical role in getting Biden to run on a stronger climate plan, and also getting young people energized to vote for him, which wasn't the same energy 6 months ago. So, we prioritize swing states and states that we felt like we could not only, have a presence, but thrive in shifting the narrative. And we did just that. So last night, we were all together as a movement watching the results. Most of the results we expected. Arizona is certainly a place that we saw that we were proud of, that did a lot better than we expected.
Yeah, awesome. And I want to get into talking about that climate plan. But Erica, I think there's been a discussion over the last, 8 hours, 12 hours about the Latino vote, and this once again treating the Latino vote as a monolith, and only seeing it through these sort of, and I think the what we talked about before, in the ways that racism and privilege play a part of it, but seeing the Latino vote through the eyes of Cuban Americans in Miami. But Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted out recently. She said, "We've been sounding the alarm about Dem vulnerabilities with Latinos for a long time. And there wasn't the turnout that was necessarily expected for the Democrats." What's your response to that? What are those vulnerabilities? And how do you see them being fixed moving forward?
We're usually an afterthought. Honestly, I completely agree with Congresswoman. We tend to be an afterthought for campaigns, especially, I think both for Republicans and Democrats. And to me, what showed, last night and today with, all the media now focusing on the Latino vote, and, with us like biting our nails to see what's going to happen in Florida versus Arizona, is that we need to start early, and we need to understand the Latino community. We're definitely not all, we all come from different countries, Some of us have been here for one generation. Some of us have been here for so many generations. Some people literally the border crossed them in Texas and Arizona and other states. And so I hope to see in the future, and I've been also sounding this alarm since I was working, when I worked for Bernie in 2016, I saw this even within the Bernie campaign and in the Hillary campaign. I saw the same thing, that there was very little infrastructure and very little focus on understanding the Latino community and the Latino vote. And so we got to do better. And I hope that this is a lesson to understand, like, what can we do in Florida? Maybe Cubans may be more Republican, but there's also lots of Puerto Ricans. There's also lots of Mexicans now in Florida. So let's try and understand that first, so that we can have a better strategy and make sure that Florida can change in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I was speaking with Chuck Rocha recently, and he ran the Bernie. He was part of the Latino caucus, and he's part of the Bernie campaign this time around. And I was like, what is it about getting the Latino vote out? Was it the Medicare for All platform? Was it the Green New Deal? And was it economic justice? And he was just like, no, it was just about treating Latino voters like white voters, like treating them as important as a white voter in Michigan, And I was like, damn, that is some hard truth right there, which is, start early, build relationships, and policy is important, but not as important as necessarily building those relationships. And I know the two of you have been doing that. Shante, you worked on Charles Booker's campaign. There we go. It's a hard S's out there. And Amy McGrath, we saw in Kentucky, did lose to Mitch McConnell. She was projected to probably lose. $88 million was poured into her campaign from all over this country, right? How many emails did folks on, DCCC listservs get? What's your reaction to that? And do you think that Charles Booker going up against McConnell might have done better?
Well, my first reaction to that is actually to thank a lot of the staff that was on the ground, no matter what campaign they were on, whether it was my team with Booker or with McGrath. We both had a common goal, which was to get rid of Mitch McConnell in office. Here's the overall problem here, is that we've noticed that some of our leaders in power in the Democratic Party tend to hold on to values of what they think a candidate should look like, how they should talk, how they should appeal to voters, and which base is important. And that may not necessarily align with the people power that's aligning in the state at that moment. And I think that's what we've seen with the McGrath campaign. I think that statistically we saw that, Booker did poll a lot better than McGrath did, but I think ultimately we have to do a better job of investing in these grassroots candidates from day one, and being comfortable stepping outside of our comfort zones to get the wins that we need. Last night, we saw that there were a couple of results also in South Carolina that didn't go the way that we needed it to, which poses the bigger question to what's next for everybody, because what's happening right now isn't it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's hard to say that McConnell's going to be back, but 88 million, man. I mean, spend that. Sunrise and RAICES could use some of that money. We need to build for the long term here. Okay, so on immigration, let's say Biden is squeaking through. We've got a Republican Senate, Erica. You, I think, have been on some of the inside of some of these discussions with the Biden camp, or very familiar with them. What does the first 100 days of a Biden administration look like when it comes to immigration and justice right now?
Oh, that's a good question. Look, I've been working with RAICES and many other organizations on creating some of the blueprint that we want to see in the first 100 days. And it's very, very important for a lot of us in the immigrant rights movement to make sure that everything that Trump has done in his administration is undone, first of all, right? Every policy, I honestly can spend the entire day telling you every single policy that Trump has enacted against the immigrant community. So all that has to be undone, but also making sure that we're also looking at what happened in the Obama era, right? Where a lot of immigration enforcement was so tough because they wanted to be able to get something in Congress, right? So they wanted to use sort of being tough on immigration as a way to get a path to citizenship for the immigrant community. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen again, right? Since the very beginning, that we are start dismantling the detention system, that we start dismantling ICE as an agency, that we start seeing the Border Patrol not as a military, that the border is not a military town anymore, or towns, but rather that we are seeing it as how can we make sure that we are creating humanitarian, I can't even think of the word right now, but yeah, that we're looking at it from a human perspective, not necessarily as we have to militarize the border so much because immigrants are a threat. It's a reality that that's not the case. So there's so much to do, but we gotta ensure that we don't go back to the Obama ways that we had before Trump either.
Yeah. So much of this is, you know, I feel like I'm living in two different moments in time. Don't you feel like we're in the future? We see, you know, the undocumented, unafraid calls, right? that transform this nation, and yet we've got millions of people still voting for Donald Trump. And yeah, some of the wall has been built and rebuilt, et cetera. You know, it's like I feel like we're straddling this moment, and we are being birthed. Now I'm getting all poetic, but we can't be birthed. Like, can't we just be birthed into a better democracy? Shante, same question when it comes to Sunrise and all of your, man, I just want to say just hats off, because I am so inspired by Sunrise and the multi-generational, the multi-issue focus, while still really having a goal of human survival at the center, which is around climate change. Biden's got a $2 trillion climate plan. First 100 days. How do you want to see him make good on that if he is in fact the president?
Yeah, so our focus right now is holding him accountable to his Build Back Better promises that he made with us. Like I mentioned earlier, Biden's campaign plan around climate got significantly stronger and more popular once we were involved in shaping, you know, what it looks like to have a climate plan that not only impacts those that live in the fire zones or in the South where hurricanes happen every year and they're getting worse due to, you know, climate change, but how does that impact working class people? How does it, you know, improve the quality of life of all citizens in the United States? So that is our first priority. Our second priority is, you know, making sure that his cabinet, if elected, reflects the best interest of those that he needs to serve. We're prepared in any way to hold, you know, Biden accountable, because we're very thankful for the ways that in which that he's been, you know, very accessible to our feedback. But, you know, the work doesn't stop today if we get results. It doesn't stop tomorrow if we get results. We'll keep holding him accountable to the things that he's promised us. Okay,
and this final question, I said it was a final question, but if there are 4 more years of Trump, what then? What are we're girding ourselves? Or it's just continuing the same work, Erica?
We got to keep fighting. We have no other option. We got no other option. And this is in so many ways a marathon.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to go back to Arizona as an example. It took us 10 or more years to get rid of people like Joe Arpaio and others. So I think we can continue. We need to continue to fight and not give up. We got to be in the streets the next day. We just can't put our arms up and say, that's it. I'm mad and now I'm leaving. No, that's why I came to this country, because I know that America is always going to be fighting for democracy. And that's why I'm here.
Amen. Let Arizona be a shining light for everybody. And the fact that Arizona, I did not see that. I definitely did not see that. Shante, same. 4 more years. Is there any more environmental regulation to roll back? I think he's rolled them all back.
Oh, I wish that was so. And 4 more years, we need to organize, mobilize, and take this country back. And we're looking at 2021 and 2022 to flip the Senate and you know, hold these Dems accountable that weren't fighting hard enough for us, and unseat these folks that, you know, have voted in ways that aren't productive for everyone. We are closely watching the results, as is everyone else in this nation, because we aren't naive. We very strongly believe that Trump will try to, halt progress and potentially steal this election. And we've been training our base for months on how to respond to this. So we are prepared in every aspect of what it looks like to deploy organizing tactics to fight back.
Awesome. Shante Wolf, Erica Andiola, thank you both so much for being here. Best of luck. Get some rest. And thank you just for leading this fight for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And when I say us, I mean me as an independent journalist, not necessarily AJ Plus. But you know where I stand. You know generally how I feel, and that's okay. Thank you all for watching. Share this stream. We got one more segment left. Wrapping it all up. Feels good. We got here. Is the election over? No? Okay. Still going? Great. But to Shantae's point, we're going to be talking about what happens if Trump does try and declare victory. We're going to be talking about that long fight. But also talking with someone who I regularly talk with on his daily show called The Damage Report on the Young Turks. He's so great. I think he probably has had no sleep. Please welcome John Iadarola.
How's it going, Francesca? Good to talk to you.
Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here. I wanted to mix up my day. I've been talking for 24 hours straight, so why not do a little bit of talking? Let's talk. I've enjoyed the show so far.
Oh, thank you. You've been listening very patiently for a little bit. John, what's broken? Tell me, what's happened?
Everything is broken. Wherever you're watching this, look around at America around you, and it's fundamentally broken in a lot of different ways. Our political structures, our norms, our hopes and expectations for our fellow citizens, those are all shattered, even if Biden wins, which is looking more likely. That's the good news. Still broken, though. We'll still be a failed state, even if Biden ekes it out. And it is looking pretty good. He's he is up in Michigan, and it looks like the remaining votes are going to be good there. Pennsylvania, similar. Georgia seems a little bit less likely, but even there, a lot of the outstanding votes are still going to be coming from some of the metropolitan areas around Atlanta. And Nevada is still going to be a squeaker. And we might not know for some of these states for a couple of days. That's the biggest issue. But assuming those continue to go in the direction they are, then Biden is going to win. It'll be an interesting question of by how much, though.
Yeah. John, I don't know why I was surprised by this, but after all this talk from a lot of media outlets of like, we know we're not going to know the results election night, everyone just started piling on, calling states and just like, oh, we know. And like an hour before they were like, there are millions of ballots still coming in and being counted and da-da-da. And then it's like, oh, we got to announce it.
Yeah.
Why can't we just learn to wait?
No, we can't. No, we can't. I spent the last few weeks on my show just constantly talking to my audience and saying, okay, we have got an agreement, right? We're not going to lose our stuff on election day. And everybody on either side of the camera, them and me, said yes, but we all had our fingers crossed behind our backs. We all knew that there was a small chance of a landslide. Maybe it was 5%, maybe it was 10%. But then as the day went on election day, we all acted as if, no, it was guaranteed and now we've lost it. Oh my God. Florida's going red. And I found myself shocked that Florida went red, even though I predicted on my election pool that it was going red. And I've never not been disappointed by Florida. Why was I so shocked on the day of? Texas didn't flip blue. I don't know why I thought it might. But so I think that we caused a lot of the anxiety for ourselves. We knew how the votes were going to roll in. They're doing that. On the other side, we knew what Trump's strategy was going to be, his non-electoral strategy, his judicial strategy, and he's rolling that out as well. We don't yet know who's going to win, but all of this has been scripted. We're still on script so far.
I know. Tell me when we're off script. Tell me when we could just vamp. I want to know, in terms of the lack of a landslide, what are your thoughts? Why wasn't there a landslide? Do you think the Biden campaign was even campaigning for a landslide? It's hard to imagine you wouldn't be campaigning to win very hard, but that's what it feels like. Tell me.
Look, it is going to take a while for us to know enough to know who wins, and even longer to really be able to start digging into where were the successes, where were the failures. There are both. There are going to be a lot of fundamental failures. In your last block, you talked very importantly about one of those areas. I had Chuck Rocha on my show multiple times. He was just screaming from the rooftop for Biden to do what he needed to do, and it turns out Biden didn't really for that community. But that said, it looks like Arizona is going to be flipped. There are lessons there, obviously. They don't necessarily all really have to do with Joe Biden. I think that activist organizations are going to be owed a lot of credit for that. Even if he wins in Michigan and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, you've got a lot of activists on the ground who don't necessarily agree on a lot of issues with Joe Biden, who will have made that possible. But there are areas, even in Ohio, which he lost, where he was beating Hillary Clinton by a significant amount. There are lessons to be learned there. But look, he might win. But as you said, like, we didn't get the landslide, and the landslide isn't important in terms of determining who becomes president, but it's important for all these other reasons contextually around American society and politics over the last 4 years. I think it would have reassured a lot of people who are invested a lot in politics, a lot of regular Americans, a lot of people around the globe, that Trump was some sort of aberration. Even if he wasn't, it would have let us think, maybe we're not terrible. Like, maybe we're not a terrible people, but we are in a lot of ways. A lot of us are really bad, and it's going to be tight. He's going to win. Biden is going to win the popular vote over Trump. Not just, the worst person to be president, the biggest failure to be president, all of that, an epic failure. The gap, percentage-wise, is going to be like exactly Obama's win over Romney, basically.
Right.
Like nothing matters, really. That's an issue, I think.
We can't have anything nice, but in some ways it's a sobering outcome of, yes, this is the country that elected Donald Trump. Yes, this is the country where now more voters did vote for Donald Trump than they did in 2016, because that's what happens when you get out the vote. Some people are going to not necessarily vote Democrat, and Republicans have to remember that when we get out the vote. What does it say about Democrats? I mean, it's sort of this, what do you think it says about, and I want to sort of pivot to the House, right? Here's a place where we didn't think the Democrats would lose seats. We, in fact, thought they would gain seats. It turns out they did lose. They've maintained control over it. What is your assessment on that front?
I mean, look, my assessment probably isn't going to surprise a lot of people that watch your show or watch my show, but the Democratic strategy is largely a failure, and it's not a new failure. They were following with Biden a variation on the strategy that they've run in any number of Senate contests, any number of presidential elections. It was the Clinton strategy. Biden will have benefited from the fact that he won't be the target of a little bit of the baked-in hatred for Hillary Clinton, the misogyny and things like that.
Yes.
But the idea that it's, like the Republicans aren't really that bad. I mean, Trump's a bit wacky, but we can work together and nothing really has to change. That message has just been woven through everything that Joe Biden has done. Yes, he's more progressive than he used to be. He presented a policy platform that was more progressive than Hillary Clinton, but there was always going to be a lot of suspicion about to what extent he actually believed any of that. And his ability to really get people fired up and wanting to vote for something rather than against something, it just isn't really there. And it's this like ad dominated, political, like contractor dominated, you just have to sort of narrowly eke out a win against the progressive in the primary and then just don't rock the boat and hope that the Republican, I don't know, says the N-word on video or something. It's that sort of strategy.
Yeah.
And it came really close with Trump. He hasn't yet been filmed saying it, but I'm sure he has. That's not a positive strategy. That's not, the times where the Democrats have won big, like with Clinton, like with Obama, especially the first time, those were different sorts of candidacies, even if in the end the policy sort of ended up moving back towards the Democratic mean.
Sure.
They were presented differently in terms of the campaign. And if the Democrats truly want to win in a way that not only delivers the White House, but also creates a durable lead in the House and the Senate, they need something like that. And they have it waiting in the wings with AOC as well as others. Just the pit in my stomach right now is largely about the fact that I know they're already looking to ways to try to stop her in the future, to try to make it sure that AOC doesn't become the candidate someday. They want whoever it is, to be the next Biden. Yeah. And that is going to lead to a lot of really close, tense elections.
Absolutely. You're going to take you already sidelined the most popular politician in this country, Bernie Sanders. I have no doubt that the Democratic Party will absolutely try and sideline the second or now first most popular politician in the entire country, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We had Jamaal Bowman on earlier, who basically said that Bernie would have won. And, maybe, look, I actually happen to agree. I think that we would have known by now, specifically the states that Bernie was very strong in, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, that are now a little bit more squeakers for Biden.
Mm-hmm.
But we've also, and I've said this on Newsbroke a lot, and I said it in the very beginning of this election cycle, was that, in order to defeat Trumpism, you need a vision, you need a plan, right? And that all the campaigns you mentioned, Obama had a vision, right? Even if it was just change,
Yeah.
There was a vision there. And going back to normal, and I'm not that guy, it failed in 2016, and man, it is hanging on by a thread in the year 2020.
Yeah, and if it's so, the vision of, hey, you won't have to deal with this guy anymore, that was going to be baked into literally any candidate. Making it the focus of your campaign doesn't really make a lot of sense. Thank God Trump was as bad as he was, and that it was so on display. It was a little bit harder for Hillary to run based on that. Biden has 4 years of us being constantly horrified by Donald Trump's statements and actions, so that helped him out a little bit, but that's not how you gain enough power to actually put forward some sort of bold agenda and get it passed. Although, to be fair, the Democrats don't really have that. So I guess they don't need a supermajority because they don't want the supermajority, because then the onus is on them to act. They don't want to act. I hate the idea of Joe Biden winning the presidency, but the Senate staying with the Republicans, because it means effectively that we still have nothing for the next 4 years that doesn't have to do with executive orders. But
Yeah.
some Democrats in the Senate are probably, they don't not necessarily mind that much, because they're perfectly comfortable just wasting the next couple of years, not passing anything, raising a bunch of money, and then, getting reelected, I guess, to continue to do nothing for a while.
Susan Collins, did she win? She won. This is like, that's all you need to know. Susan Collins of Maine won her reelection. I mean, she was so ready to retire. Let's be real. She was like, I'm on my way out. Goodbye. And my God. I mean, to be fair, if Biden does win, I guess someone like Susan Collins, who's been waffling, might be a good thing. I don't know. Rather than, there are worse Republicans out there, but it's just like, yes, my faith in Americans has gone down. Okay, before you go, John, I want to show you this, because every once in a while Fox News does these graphics that they don't know they're doing, and their graphics department, I believe we've talked about, is secretly starting an insurgency against their right-wing agenda. But this was yesterday. Jesse Waters played this graphic and sort of reminded Americans that we aren't actually all that divided when it comes to the issues. Take a look.
We have some breaking election news as results are starting to come in now from our Fox News voter analysis election survey. And you're going to see that on the side of your screen over there. It's a breakdown of all the data from the 50 states to help explain who's voted and why they voted and the way they did. And it shows us what issues are the most important to voters. And we're going to update that information all night. So, Dana, it is, I guess, not traditional to have, I guess, the entire ticket out there in swing states campaigning on Election Day. What does that tell you?
Well, I think that the Democrats, we talk about bedwetters, right? They are, they're soaked.
How you doing over there, Juan?
I mean, I can't imagine being somebody on the Biden campaign that has to take the phone calls from everybody calling, the columnists and the county chairman calling, is everything okay? I'm hearing that's not okay.
Okay, for those of you who are watching, you should have been paying attention to the right-hand column. I didn't set this up exactly right, but you probably caught on pretty soon. Overwhelming majority of, this is Fox voter analysis, and they're polling, overwhelming majority of Americans want to keep Roe v. Wade, believe we should do something about climate change, believe we should expand Obamacare, believe there should be some sort of government subsidized medicine. What else was there? It was the entire list of issues that we all know most Americans agree on. John, do people just still think Trump might deliver on those things? Or how do we square this?
I think that, look, that there were the policy specific things. There were even more general questions like, should the government do more or do less? And they're like, do more. No, we generally just want them to do more. And Jesse Waters did a great job of teeing those graphics up and then trying his best to pretend that they weren't there. I think that those are things that can drive a vote, but if you don't have a very clear contrast of somebody who is against those things and someone who is equally strongly for those things, they're not the only thing that causes someone to vote a particular way.
Yes.
And so it's not that Biden wasn't more for those things than Trump. He almost certainly was in almost all of those categories, if not all. But he wasn't running the campaign that really centers them, that communicates well around them, that would have made it obvious for voters that this is our guy on all of these. And so they turn to other things. A lot of voters, like, they might have a preference on a policy, but they're voting based on white identity politics. That's most of Trump's base, is just white identity politics from floor to ceiling. And you don't have, like, the Democrats could have run a candidate like Bernie Sanders, who would have focused on every one of those issues constantly, but they didn't do that. And so the joke is on Fox News to some extent with those graphics, but it's also on the Democratic Party. It's a reminder that we have a platform that the people support, but that our leaders choose not to run candidates based on.
John Iadarola of the Damage Report. I just want to make a plug for progressive media, outlets like AJ Plus, Newsbroke, the Damage Report. It seems like these are the hard truths that never break through to the mainstream media. And we wish they will, that we wish they do. We want John Iadarola on MSNBC. And yes, thank you so much for your time. Everyone, please listen and watch the Damage Report every day. I'm on Mondays. It's so good. It's so fun. And John, take care. We'll be watching you tomorrow.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yes. And thank you all for being here. We got one final segment because we need to talk about the what ifs. The what ifs if the what ifs happen, what do we do? There have been many organizations preparing. There have been teams of attorneys preparing for the amount of litigation going forward. And we all have to kind of take a deep breath and know that this might not be over by the end of the day, by the end of this week. This might take a lot longer than that, and it might take all of us as well. And I want to bring on our next guest, who's been working with Choose Democracy, which is an organization that's been openly talking about what Americans should do if there is an American coup, a coup de Trump, if you will. Please welcome Joshua Kahn Russell.
Great to be here, Francesca. This has been a really great show.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's almost like all of the people at AJ Plus and Newsbroke who have made it happen are wonderful. Joshua, you're right. You're taking us out of this. I want to look forward without, a little bit of optimism here, but also, a lot of sort of sobriety. I don't know what I'm saying, but what have you guys been talking about over at Choose Democracy? What are your strategies? What are you thinking now that we have this squeaker that Donald Trump has said the exact thing that we thought he was going to say, which is this is a fraudulent election and I have essentially won?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty grounded right now that social movements taking this fight forward are prepared. You and John nailed it earlier when you said this is basically on script. So this is literally the exact scenario we were preparing for, that Trump would declare victory early, that he would call the continued counting of ballots fraudulent, and then going to the courts. And so that's where we are right now. There are rallies happening all across the country right now to ensure the continued counting of every vote. Those rallies are going to escalate all the way until the 10th. They're probably going to peak on the 7th. And there's a wide variety of coalitions making them happen.
Mm-hmm. And tell me about Choose Democracy and what you all have been telling the American people about a coup potentially coming to our country. It doesn't look like other coups necessarily. It doesn't look like the ones that we've backed ourselves. It's more, it's a buttoned up. It's along the lines of the year 2000. But how are you preparing folks mentally and just sort of organizationally?
We started preparing in August once we saw the writing on the wall that Trump was certainly going to take it to the courts, if not try to move through other extra legal means to try to peel off as many votes as possible. And so part of our goal has been to both psychologically prepare people to say, yes, it can happen here. This thing was stolen in 2000. And to us, to be clear, Trump just declaring himself a winner does not constitute a coup. If there is machinery of the government behind him that actually stops the counting of ballots through a variety of different kinds of extra legal or legal means, we have a couple different red lines around that. And there is stages to this thing. So we're in the stage now where we're trying to protect the counting of every ballot. We are trying to stiffen the spines of various election officials, whether that's at Board of Elections or elsewhere, to keep counting ballots, even if they get orders to stop, right? Because if we at least have the totals, then we have something to organize around. And so the plan here forward is it's in the framework of what's called non-compliance, knowing that right now we're in a contest for legitimacy of who gets to be declared the winner. And the next step after these rallies, people are looking at boards of elections to just keep the votes from being counted, or keep the votes being
from
counted.
not being counted. Yes.
Yeah.
And boards of election and statewide levels, right? In all the different states.
Yeah. I mean, one of this, and we're not trying to get too far ahead of ourselves by mapping out every possible scenario, but we do think, we are optimistic right now, but if this thing goes south, it'll probably because either in Pennsylvania or Wisconsin, we get, courted to death. So the next step on that is to, show up at these rallies at boards of elections. And then eventually it might require pressuring the governor to do the right thing. And then we also have a escalation plan if it gets even further, where Trump tries to take this away, take it all the way up to the courts. And that involves real non-compliance. It was great that you had Shantae from Sunrise on earlier. They're part of a coalition that's organizing youth strikes. Labor across sectors is talking about rolling strikes. And so we are preparing for that eventuality, hoping that this will be wrapped up sooner and it won't come to that.
Absolutely. But it's something that we need to be clear-eyed about, that yes, it can happen here, that there's a reason that the courts have been packed by the Republicans. They are trying to pave the way to make their minority rule even easier, as if the Electoral College and the Senate weren't unrepresentative enough. Joshua, thank you so much for being on. Are there any sort of tips, words of wisdom, pieces of advice you want to give anyone who's sort of like dying in anxiety right now?
Yeah. Every time in the last couple of days in particular that I've felt my anxiety or I've gotten scared or nervous, I realize that it's because there's so many people and things I love, including the planet itself, that's under real threat right now. So I center myself in fighting for those things rather than just being in the fear of losing them. And when I get grounded in fighting those things, I remember that making social change in the United States of America is an unbelievably hard and long process. We need to keep our eyes on the big picture, eyes on the prize. And the main issue on the ballot this time was that Donald Trump is president, and it would have been great if the country repudiated it. But that's not the country that we live in. And so we can look at the terrain that we have and understand that the conditions are really hard. We're trying to operate a country of 300 million people in the 21st century in a system that was built in 1790 by slaveholders. Of course it's a mess. Of course it's a mess. And under those conditions, I've been deeply inspired by what social movements are doing on the ground right now. It was great that you were talking to someone from RAICES about Arizona. I also want to shout out indigenous organizers with Indian Collective, groups like Mi Gente, groups like Seed the Vote. Have been really doing really strong work there, and it's building out throughout the country. And so I'm optimistic that moving forward, our movements are going to continue to adapt to the terrain that we have. And, the outcome of Biden is we get to be going on offense. And the outcome of Trump is we might need to stay on defense for a while. But either way, we're going to keep this moving.
Joshua Kahn Russell of Choose Democracy. Go to choosedemocracy.net or org.
.us.
That's
and
right.
also,
I knew it was a US. I knew it was a US.
Claiming the United States. And also, if things start to escalate and you get worried and you want to plug in, you can text the word choose, CHOOSE, to 504. What is it? 50409. I'll say that again. Text choose to 50409. We're also sending out, if you are living in a swing county or there's shenanigans going on at your Board of Elections office, there's now a hotline being operated by nonviolent direct action organizers that you can call to get advice on how to protest strategically, how to design actions that make sense. That is also on our website, but that hotline is 1-800-844 NVDA now, and NVDA stands for Nonviolent Direct Action. So 1-800-844 NVDA now, and we got you. There's people who are planning around this, but if it goes south, we need you to participate.
Joshua, thank you so much for keeping us grounded and keeping us focused. Be well, and we'll see you soon.
Appreciate you, Francesca.
Take good care. And thank you all for watching and being here, for popping in and out. Go back, rewatch this stream. We had such a great time. We had Jamaal Bowman on. We had Erica Andiola of RAICES, Eugene Daniels from Politico. This has just been so good. I feel better. I feel energized. And hey, share this stream whenever you can. Make sure you're subscribed to AJ Plus. Make sure you like this right now. And thank you to everyone at Newsbroke, Kate Elston, Alessandra Ram, Jesse Fernandez, Pablo de la Hoya. Thank you for being there. Matt Lieb, of course, and everyone else at AJ Plus for making this stream happen. You guys are great. Sit tight, y'all.